My mother told me that I was just a convenience. And he had to be with her, not with me. What happened next changed everything. I always thought my family liked Mark. Maybe a little too much. But that's normal, right? Parents being excited about their daughter's husband, especially when he's the kind of guy who remembers birthdays, helps with dishes, and knows how to talk to a 4-year-old without sounding like he's dumbing it down. But I didn't realize how deep it ran until the day I caught my mom smiling at him. Not a sweet, he's good for you smile. A knowing, almost wistful one. The kind I'd seen her give my dad when he fixed the leaky faucet without being asked. It unsettled me, but I brushed it off. We were standing in her kitchen after Sunday dinner, Emma pouring wine at the counter like she lived there, which she almost did, back then. Emma. My younger sister. Gorgeous, magnetic, and casually brilliant. She could walk into a room of strangers and walk out with 3 new job offers and 5 people madly in love with her. I'd spent most of my life walking 2 steps behind her, always a little dimmer. A little quieter. But she was my sister. We had the same laugh, the same love for bad late-night comedies, the same childhood wounds. She was my best friend before anyone else. So I didn't notice right away when things started to shift. Looking back, I can't even tell you when it started. Maybe it was that barbecue at my parents' place, where Mark and Emma ended up sitting together in those cheap plastic lawn chairs, laughing about something obscure. I was inside, helping Mom with potato salad, and when I came out with the tray, they didn't notice me. She had her head tilted back, laughing, and he was watching her, not in a creepy way. But in that way you watch someone who understands your joke before the punchline. Like she was fluent in him. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I didn't. That night in bed, I asked him, "Do you think Emma's funny?" He looked at me like I'd asked if water was wet. "Yeah. She's hilarious." "Why?" I shook my head. "No reason. The thing is, I didn't think he was cheating. Not even emotionally. At least not yet. But I felt something growing between them, and I didn't know how to stop it. It wasn't about love. It was about compatibility. That dangerous word people throw around when they talk about soulmates. And I couldn't shake the feeling that my family agreed with them. The worst part was how subtle it all was. There was no smoking gun, no dramatic betrayal. Just tiny signs. My mom saying things like, "You and Emma just bounce off each other so well," while clearing plates. My dad asking Mark to help Emma with her resume, even though I work in HR. Emma texting Mark about a documentary she thought he'd love, and him showing it to me like it was some shared inside joke. It wasn't that he ignored me. Mark still brought me coffee in bed on Sundays. Still kissed my forehead before work. Still called me babe when he wanted something. But our rhythm was off. The inside jokes didn't land the same way. Conversations felt slightly edited. One night, after another dinner where Emma and Mark had dominated the conversation while I felt like a guest at my own table, I said to him, "Do you think they wish you'd ended up with her instead of me?" He looked stunned. "What? No. What are you talking about?" I shrugged. "They act like you two are the real couple sometimes." "That's ridiculous," he said, wrapping an arm around me. "They just like seeing us all get along." But I wasn't us all. I was background noise. Things came to a head at Thanksgiving. That's when the balance shifted from uncomfortable to unbearable. We were all sitting around the table, and Mom decided to play this game she saw online. "Let's go around and say something we're grateful for about each person," she said, too enthusiastically. Harmless enough. Until it wasn't. When it got to Mark, he turned to Emma first. "You always challenge me to think differently," he said. "I really admire that." She smiled, soft and warm. Like they were in on something I wasn't. Then he turned to me. "And, you keep things steady. You're the rock." The room went quiet for a beat too long. And then Emma laughed, breaking the tension. But I felt like someone had taken a hammer to my chest. That night, I didn't cry. I just lay awake next to him, staring at the ceiling, wondering when being the rock became code for the one you settle for. The next day, I called my mom. I needed someone to tell me I was imagining it. That I was overthinking. That I was still the daughter they saw him with. But instead, she said, "Sweetheart, I think maybe you're just different people. You and Mark." My mouth went dry. "What does that mean?" "It's not a bad thing," she said quickly. "It's just, you were always the serious one. Mark and Emma, they just have this spark, you know? It's rare. My mother. My mother. Telling me my husband might have better chemistry with my sister. I married him, I said. Not her. I know, she said gently. But sometimes the heart sees things the head doesn't want to. I hung up. And that was the moment something inside me broke. After that call with my mom, everything looked different. It was like a film had peeled off my eyes, and now I could see it all for what it was. I went back and rewatched months of conversations, body language, glances, all those little things I'd brushed off. And I started to realize something that scared me more than anything: they weren't doing this to hurt me. They genuinely thought they were being honest. They thought they were helping. That was the worst part. If Emma had been sneaky, if Mark had been cruel, if my mom had been overtly manipulative, I could have gotten angry. But this wasn't malicious. It was sincere. That sincerity made it harder to fight. I didn't know how to protect something that everyone around me had already written off. I didn't tell Mark about the conversation with my mom. What would I even say? Hey, my mother thinks you and Emma are soulmates. Should we talk about that over dinner? Instead, I started pulling away in small ways. I'd go to bed earlier. I'd say I'm tired more often. I stopped initiating conversations about his day, his ideas, his plans. Not to punish him, but because I didn't want to hear any more signs that he and Emma were aligned. I didn't want to hear about something she said that he agreed with. I didn't want to be the contrast anymore. I was tired of being the steady one. About 2 weeks later, he noticed. You okay? He asked one night, gently. You've been. I don't know. Distant. I hesitated. Then I told the truth. I feel like I'm watching my marriage disappear in slow motion. He blinked, startled. What? I feel like I'm in the way of something, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. And everyone sees it but me. Mark sat up, completely confused. Is this about Emma? Of course it's about Emma. Nothing's happening. I know, I said. That's what makes it worse. He rubbed his face with both hands, exhaling hard. I can't believe we're having this conversation. Neither can I. There was a long silence. And then he said something that stuck with me. I love you. I married you. If I wanted someone else, I wouldn't be here. But even as he said it, I could feel the gap between us widening. Love isn't always the thing that saves you. Sometimes it's the thing that makes you stay longer than you should. A few days later, I came home from work early. I hadn't told anyone. I just wanted a quiet afternoon. When I opened the door, I heard laughter, Emma's laughter. Followed by Mark's voice, lower, amused. I stopped. They were in the living room. She was curled on the couch like she belonged there, shoes off, holding a glass of wine. He was on the other end, relaxed, like this was just another Friday. I didn't say anything. I didn't yell. I just walked in and set my bag down. They both looked at me at once. Oh, hey, Emma said. Didn't know you'd be back so soon. Mark looked guilty. Not because they were doing something wrong, but because he knew how it looked. Because he hadn't told me she was coming over. Because she was too comfortable there. I nodded. Clearly. The rest of the evening was a blur. Emma left shortly after, offering a quick bye and avoiding my eyes. Mark tried to explain, but I didn't want explanations. I wanted prevention. I wanted someone to say, I saw this coming and I made it stop. But no one had. Not him. Not her. Not anyone. I packed a bag that night. Just a small one. I told Mark I needed space. He didn't argue. He just stood there, arms crossed, face drawn. Is this it? He asked. No, I said. But it might be if things don't change. He nodded. Okay. I went to stay with a friend. The kind of friend who doesn't ask questions you're not ready to answer. She gave me the spare room and a box of wine and said, you don't have to be okay here. You just have to be honest. I cried for the first time in weeks. Not because of what was happening. But because I'd finally admitted it was real. The time away gave me clarity I didn't want. I stopped defending things I couldn't define. I stopped making excuses for why my family didn't see me the way I wanted to be seen. And I started asking myself the one question I'd been avoiding. If Mark wasn't mine, would I still fight for him? I didn't know the answer. That scared me more than losing him. Then came the dinner invitation. My mom texted me, "We're having a small thing this Sunday. Just family. Come if you want." Just family. Like I wasn't already halfway out of it. I almost didn't go. But curiosity got the better of me. I needed to see how they looked at me now after I'd pulled away. After I'd disrupted the picture they'd started painting without me. When I walked in, Mark was already there. Sitting beside Emma. Again. I took the seat across from them. The whole meal felt like I was attending a rehearsal for a version of my life I'd never agreed to. Halfway through, I asked Emma to help me with something in the kitchen. We stood at the sink, rinsing glasses. "Are you in love with him?" I asked quietly. She froze. "No." "Are you sure?" She turned to me. "I would never do that to you." "That's not what I asked." She didn't answer. And that was my answer. I didn't go home that night. I walked around the neighborhood after dinner, letting the cold air bite at my skin. I didn't even notice how long I'd been walking until my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mark. "Are you okay?" I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? That I wasn't? That I'd stopped feeling like his wife and started feeling like his sister-in-law? I stayed at my friend's again. She didn't ask questions. She just handed me a blanket and said, "You can talk when you're ready." I wasn't. Not yet. The next day, Mark texted again. "Can we talk?" And then a second message. "Just talk. I won't push." I stared at the screen for a while before finally replying. "Tomorrow. 6, our place." I didn't call it home. When I walked in the next evening, he was already there. He'd cleaned. Lit a candle. Put on soft music. Like he thought a tidy apartment could mop up months of emotional rot. "I'm not here for dinner," I said flatly. He nodded. "I know." We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. Same table where we'd laughed over wine, argued about furniture, planned vacations that never happened. "I need to know what's real for you," I said. "Because I can't keep guessing." He looked exhausted. "I never wanted any of this." "Then why didn't you stop it?" He flinched. "Because I didn't think it was happening. I thought it was all harmless." "It's not harmless when your wife feels invisible." Mark ran a hand through his hair. I was trying not to make it worse. "I thought if I acted normal, it would pass. You should have chosen me out loud. Not just quietly in your head." Silence. And then he said, "I'm sorry." It wasn't enough. But it was a start. We decided on a break. Not a dramatic breakup. No screaming or slammed doors. Just space. He stayed in the apartment. I kept the key, but I didn't use it. I went back to my friend's spare room and tried to remember who I was before I was someone's wife, someone's daughter, someone's afterthought. I stopped answering Emma's texts. I wasn't ready to be civil. I wasn't ready to pretend forgiveness was as simple as good intentions. My mom called once. Said she was worried. I told her I needed distance. That if she wanted to support me, she had to stop trying to script my life. She didn't take it well, but she listened. And for once, she didn't try to talk me out of my own pain. I started therapy. Something I'd always meant to do but never made time for. My therapist was kind, but blunt. "You've spent a lot of time making other people comfortable," she said. "Have you ever asked what it cost you?" That question sat with me longer than I expected. Weeks passed. Then a month. Then 2. Mark and I spoke occasionally. Neutral topics. Logistics. A birthday reminder. A stray memory. But there was no mention of us. That part was silent. One Sunday afternoon, I got a package. No return label. Inside was a book I'd once said I wanted to read, with a sticky note on the first page. Still listening. M. I held it in my hands for a long time. That night, I texted him. "Thank you." He replied an hour later. "I hope you're okay." I didn't answer. I wasn't okay. But I was becoming someone who might be. And then, slowly, I started coming back to myself. Not to the life I had. but to the person I'd been before I stopped believing I mattered. I took a solo weekend trip to the coast. I started jogging again, something I hadn't done since college. I even went on a couple of dates, nothing serious, just coffee, conversation. A reminder that connection could still happen. None of them were Mark. And that's when I realized something important. I missed the version of him I married. Not the one I left. That version, the man who looked at me like I was a mystery he wanted to spend his life solving, had vanished long before I walked out the door. Emma reached out again. This time, an email. Longer. More thoughtful. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She didn't explain away what happened. She just owned it. I saw the boundary, and I crossed it emotionally, even if not physically. And I hate that I did that to you. I wish I could undo it. I know I can't. But if there's ever a path back to you, even just as sisters, I'll walk it one step at a time. I cried reading it. Not because I forgave her, but because I finally believed she knew what she'd done. Mark and I met one last time. Not to fix anything. Just to speak clearly. We met at a quiet cafe. No expectations. Just two people who used to know each other better than anyone else. You look good, he said. So do you. We talked for a while. About nothing and everything. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't painful. Just honest. He looked at me after a long pause. Do you think we could ever try again? I stared at him. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe we could rewrite the past with better pens. But the truth was simple. I don't think I'd trust us again, I said softly. And I don't want to live waiting for old cracks to show. He nodded. Not hurt. Just understanding. I'll always care about you, I said. Me too. And that was that. We stood. We hugged. And we let go. People always talk about closure like it's a conversation. A final meeting, a last word, a letter burned in the sink. But for me, closure didn't come from Mark. Or Emma. Or even my parents. It came in the form of a Tuesday morning. I was brushing my teeth when I realized I hadn't thought about either of them, Emma or Mark, for 3 full days. No bitterness, no pangs, no overanalysis of old memories. Just silence. The kind that didn't hurt anymore. I looked in the mirror and smiled, toothpaste on my chin, and whispered, "There you are." My therapist said healing isn't linear. And she was right. There were days when I missed the old life so much I couldn't breathe. There were nights I dreamt about family dinners, where everything was back to normal and Mark smiled only at me. But mostly, there was growth. I started seeing my parents again, gradually. I told them I wasn't ready to talk about what happened, and to their credit, they respected that. Mom still hovered a little too close, trying to gauge my emotions. Dad avoided eye contact for the first few visits. But I could tell they knew they'd crossed something, even if they didn't fully understand how deep the cut went. Emma and I hadn't spoken in person since that last email. I wasn't ready. I don't know if I ever would be. But I didn't delete her messages anymore. That felt like a start. I moved into a new apartment. Small, bright, and completely mine. For the first time in years, I decorated without compromise. Pale green walls. An old armchair I found at a flea market. Art prints I'd admired for years but never bought because they weren't our style. I made space for myself. Literal space. One evening, I hosted a small dinner for 2 friends. Just wine, pasta, and laughter. The kind of simple joy that doesn't need to be photographed. At one point, one of them asked, "Do you ever talk to him?" And I realized I didn't feel the need to. Not anymore. Mark had become a chapter. Not the book. One afternoon, I saw them. Emma and Mark. It was at a farmer's market. I was alone, picking up fresh basil. They were across the square, near a bakery stand, looking at pastries. They weren't holding hands. They weren't laughing like fools. Just standing side by side. Close, familiar. I watched for a few seconds. Then looked away. I don't know if they saw me. I didn't approach. Didn't feel the need to. That night, I didn't cry. That's when I knew I'd survived the fire. Not untouched, but unbroken. I started writing again. Nothing dramatic. Just journaling and a few short essays. I wrote about silence. About women who disappear in their own lives without noticing. About how easy it is to make yourself smaller to fit inside someone else's comfort. One of those essays got picked up by a blog. A friend of a friend saw it and reached out. Asked if I'd ever considered writing more publicly. I hadn't. But suddenly, I wanted to. Not to expose anyone. Not for revenge. Just to tell the truth. Because it's hard to say out loud that your family loved your husband a little too much. That they saw someone else, your sister, as a better fit. That you slowly disappeared from your own marriage and nobody tried to stop it. And that you didn't leave in fury but in sadness. And that was okay. One night, months later, Emma sent me a photo. It was of us as kids. Sitting on the grass, faces covered in popsicle drips, arms around each other. The caption was simple. I miss her. I stared at the photo for a long time. I didn't respond. But I didn't delete it either. Sometimes I wonder how their story played out. Whether they ended up together. Whether they lied to themselves about it at first. Whether they found a way to make it feel clean, even though it never would be. But most days, I don't wonder at all. I think about other things. The new series I'm outlining. A small weekend trip I'm planning. A man I met in line at the post office, who made me laugh so hard I snorted. A future that's mine again. Healing didn't come in some neat package. It came slowly. In days without longing. In choosing not to text. In remembering how to laugh at my own jokes, even when no one else is in the room. I still carry scars. But they don't burn anymore. They're just part of the map now. And I'm still walking. A year passed. That's how long it took before I felt like I could sit in a room with all of them again. My parents. Emma. Mark. It was my dad's retirement party. Small gathering. Mostly family, a few neighbors. The kind of event where you show up because you have to, and you steel yourself to make it through. I almost didn't go. But then I remembered something my therapist said once: sometimes closure isn't what they give you. It's what you take with you when you leave. So I went. I wore a blue dress I hadn't worn since before everything fell apart. Not to make a statement, just because I liked the way it fit. I curled my hair, did my makeup like I used to when I actually cared about how I showed up. And I walked in like I belonged there. Because I did. The moment I stepped inside, the room went quiet for a half second. It wasn't dramatic. Just the kind of silence that happens when a presence shifts the air. Then someone laughed. The music came back. Life resumed. Emma was by the window, helping Mom arrange appetizers. Mark was near the bar, talking to my cousin. We didn't greet each other. Not immediately. The day went on in polite segments: smiles, small talk, photo ops. A distant familiarity. Until later, when the guests started thinning out. Emma came to me first. She stood in front of me, hands clasped, like a kid about to confess something. You look good, she said. So do you. A pause. I wasn't sure you'd come. I wasn't sure either. More silence. Then, I never stopped missing you. I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't the enemy. She was a person who'd made a series of selfish, human mistakes. I know, I said. And for the first time, I meant it. Mark came over later. After most people had left. He didn't hover or make a scene. Just a quiet, "Can I sit?" I nodded. We sat outside, side by side on my parents' old patio swing. The same one we'd sat on years earlier, drunk on wine and future plans. You look happy, he said. I am. He smiled, small. I'm glad. There was a long silence, but it wasn't heavy. I don't think I've ever said it clearly, he said. I'm sorry. For not choosing you more loudly. For letting other people's opinions fog up what we had. I looked at him. His face hadn't changed much. But he seemed older. Like grief and regret had taught him something patience never could. I believe you, I said. And I forgive you. A pause. But that doesn't mean I want to go back. I know, he said. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just sat, breathing the same air for a little while longer. Then he stood. Goodbye, then? For now, I said. Or maybe forever. Who knows? He nodded. And walked away. That night, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt whole. Because I'd finally stopped needing answers. Because I'd stopped waiting for someone to validate my pain. Because I'd become someone who could look at love, betrayal, and family and say, you don't get to define me anymore. Life moved on. I kept writing. Started submitting to more publications. Got a small column in a local journal about relationships and self-rediscovery. It wasn't big. But it was mine. I started seeing someone, eventually. Slowly. Carefully. He wasn't flashy. He didn't quote poetry or sweep me off my feet. But he listened. He made space. And he never made me feel like I was a backup plan. That felt revolutionary. Emma and I still aren't what we used to be. But we're something. We have coffee once a month. Sometimes we talk about books, or our mom's weird casserole experiments. Sometimes we sit in silence. But we're rebuilding something small. And it's enough. My parents don't bring up the past anymore. I think they finally understand. Maybe not completely. But enough to know there are lines you don't cross even with love. Especially with love. Every so often, I still think about the version of me who stayed quiet for too long. Who swallowed discomfort to keep the peace. Who mistook silence for strength. I honor her. She got me through it. But I don't want to be her again. I want to be the woman who left before she disappeared entirely. The one who chose herself when no one else did. There's a freedom that comes with losing everything you thought you needed and realizing you're still standing. Not because you're unbreakable. But because you're worth rebuilding. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.